And the first panel for this discussion.
I thought it was my question.
No, that's the big one.
Oh, that's the big one.
That's the team.
Oh, the team. Okay.
The team.
Yeah,
so the first question will be who benefit most from the ceasefire right now, the US, Iran, or neither? And our panel is Steve Smith.
Yes.
Time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Oni. Yeah. Personally, I think that both sides get a benefit, right? But the most benefit goes to Donald Trump because he is trying to manipulate the situation by having a ceasefire. Because just before this happened, the US stock market actually crashed when they heard about the problem of the Strait of Hormuz. But then as soon as he mentioned that we're having a ceasefire agreement, suddenly the stock market started to increase in value. So I think he is planning it this way so that he can get the stock market up, because that's the way he's going to get more votes in the midterms. So personally, I think this is his goal, right? But it also benefits Iran in that, generally I think the whole world is on the side of Iran. And the fact that they have refused the ceasefire makes them look like they have actually kind of won this exchange. And so they look like they are stronger than the US because they have made a huge impact on the world, especially not just the US, but all countries, because of the risk of inflation related to the oil price, which has increased significantly. So basically that's what I think. I think there's a little bit of benefit for both sides, but mostly it goes to Trump because he will use that for manipulation in the midterms. Is that?
Yes, Steve.
Okay.
So basically you're saying the ceasefire is good for Donald Trump more than for the other side.
Yes.
Okay,
Definitely.
thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
So I will continue with our second panel is John Hargreaves, and he will comment on this ceasefire about peace or about buying time to regroup. John Hargreaves.
Okay, well, you phrased that in an interesting way. So is it about peace or is it about buying time to regroup? So you can see that differently depending on which side you're looking from. I think if you are looking from the American side, do they need time to regroup? Not particularly, because America is able to continue producing missiles, continue producing weapons. Militarily, it's in a much stronger position. So from a military point of view, America does not need time to regroup. Is it about peace? Well, again, not so much, because the point is that from Donald Trump's point of view, he obviously doesn't care about peace for Iranian people. What he cares about is the fact that US soldiers are not going to be killed. The US, as we know, is protected by the big, beautiful ocean, as Donald Trump has called it, on the other side of the Atlantic. So unlike countries in Europe, Asia, other parts of the world, which are vulnerable to bombing, including by American bombing, America itself is not vulnerable to being bombed by any other country. So the only kind of peace that Donald Trump is concerned about is not sending soldiers into Iran, for example, to occupy the country, because if he does that, then their soldiers will be killed, and if he does that, he will lose the elections. And as Steve rightly said, I think Donald Trump's first concern is with himself. He's concerned with his own power, and he is concerned with maintaining the grip that he has on the Republican Party, maintaining his grip on the Congress, and so he needs to do well in the elections in November. Therefore, he needs the peace for that purpose. So that's the purpose of the peace from his point of view, is to avoid American deaths in combat, and so that he can go forward to the elections without that hanging over him, without there being a war, and as Steve said, without the price of gas, for example, being exorbitantly high. But there's a major problem there because, as we see, Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz. So as long as Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, that means that the gas price is going to stay high. It's going to affect the world economy. So the economy is not going to go well. So that's a risk for Trump coming up to the elections. So what is he going to do about that? Well, that's a big issue, and this is the kind of quagmire that he's got himself into. And as you already realized, he cannot send an invasion force into Iran to topple the Iranian government. He cannot even organize, for example, an occupation of Karg Island, the Iranian oil exporting island, which many people discussed and said, well, Trump could send troops, take over that island, and that would help to break the stranglehold of Iran on the Strait of Hormuz. But if he does that, he's going to lose soldiers in the course of the operation. It's not clear how long that control of the island could last. So he's really in a bit of a mess. So from my point of view, and this relates to your kind of overarching question, is this peace going to last? Is this ceasefire going to last? From Trump's point of view, it's going to be very difficult to go back to war. The only kind of war that he can really go back to is dropping more bombs on Iranians, killing more Iranians, destroying some more missiles. So is the ceasefire going to last? Is there going to be another round of combat? Yes, quite probably. I think that Trump will go back. Any time that he wants to get more concessions from the Iranians, he's going to go back. He's going to say, okay, we're going to decimate your infrastructure. We're going to kill some more of your leaders. He's already said that. He's already threatened to bomb the country back to the Stone Ages. So I don't think he will go so far as dropping nuclear bombs on Iran, but he may well go back as far as repeating the kind of bombing that we've already seen, where he damages infrastructure, bridges, military installations, sites associated with nuclear production, and so on. So I think in that sense, very much there may be a return to combat, and the ceasefire will be only temporary. So that's from the American side. If you look from the Iranian side, do the Iranians benefit from the ceasefire? Well, yes, they do, because they need a break, obviously. Lots of their leaders have been killed. It's true that the regime has survived. Some of the senior leaders have been killed, and then the more junior leaders have stepped up and filled their shoes. But obviously, from their point of view, they may accept martyrdom if it comes, but they're not kind of keen to die. So they'll be as glad as most people would be to have a ceasefire and think that they're not going to get bombed or assassinated tomorrow. So from the Iranian point of view, they will welcome the peace, and from the Iranian the point of view of the Islamic government, they may not have a lot of consideration for kind of the people that they are supposedly protecting, but they'll be glad that Iranian people are not being massacred in large numbers and creating instability, potentially creating civil war, rebellions, and so on, which are going to destabilize the political situation, destabilize the economic situation. So they'll be glad of the ceasefire from their side as well. So from their point of view, it is very much about peace. Another point I'd like to make about the Iranians is that although they have been badly damaged, what we can see now is that the Iranians are going to get support from both China and Russia. Why are they going to get support from Russia? Because from the Russian point of view, Russia has seen that this combat between this battle between the US and Iran is very much in Russia's interest. As long as the fuel price remains high, as long as fuel is scarce, Trump has already made concessions. He's allowed Putin to sell Russian oil around the world. So that's good for the Russian economy. It gives them a source of income that they had lost there. It's obviously going to help them in their war against Ukraine, and even in military terms, they're being helped in the war against Ukraine because weapons and money that could go from America to support Ukraine is going to Israel and to Gulf Arab countries and to America's own military effort against Iran, and even Ukraine actually is supplying drones to some of the Gulf Arab states and supplying weapons and helping the Gulf Arab states and Israel to protect themselves against Iran. So resources from Ukraine are actually being diverted into that theater as well. So from Putin, for Putin, he's probably the biggest winner of anybody out of this war. And so he obviously has an interest in keeping the war going and maintaining a state of conflict. And therefore, he is going to keep supporting Iran. If necessary, he may be willing to supply them with arms and so on, just as Iran has helped him during the war against Ukraine. So that will help the Iranians to recover. China also has an interest in, I won't say necessarily supporting Iran militarily, but they certainly don't want to see Iran knocked out by the USA, because the situation here benefits China. The Chinese can see that America and Israel are, in a way, losers in this war. They are, in the sense that, for example, the Gulf Arab states are now going to recognize that they cannot depend on the US in the way that they were doing before. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar are all going to acknowledge, well, okay, we've had American bases, we put all our eggs in the American basket, so to speak, thinking that America was going to protect us, look after our interests. And what we see is that America really has betrayed our interests by jumping in the same boat with Israel to go and invade Iran and really mess up the situation in the entire West Asia, both for Iran and also to a lesser extent for the Gulf Arab states, which have been bombed by Iran, attacked by Iran. So they've lost infrastructure, potentially will lose infrastructure. They are directly affected by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. They are under a direct military threat. Their reputation as a kind of haven for wealthy business people and so on, as a secure place for investment, has been shattered. So from that, what that means is that from China's point of view, America and Israel have lost some influence with those Gulf Arab states. That's again to China, which becomes more influential, more powerful. And so the Chinese definitely have an interest in ensuring that the current Iranian government remains in power and perhaps in a position to negotiate. The one thing I cannot predict is what kind of negotiation is going to be. So that's the kind of big kind of question mark that I just can't see. If the Americans are going to negotiate with the Iranians, how are they going to negotiate? Because Donald Trump is kind of hell-bent on presenting himself as a victor. I cannot see any gains that he has made from this war up to now that enable him to present himself as a victor, other than the fact that he has destroyed a certain proportion of Iranian missiles. America has really come out more of a loser because the Strait of Hormuz has been closed, pushing up the gas prices, interfering with the world economy, and so for him to go to the negotiating table and extract further concessions from Iran is going to be difficult, because Iran has demonstrated this power that it has over the Strait of Hormuz, and so Iran, I think, is going to play for time, maybe string the negotiations along. So what I would expect is that the kind of ceasefire will be extended, and that neither side will be kind of in a hurry to go back to war 2 weeks from now, for example. Then the deadline will be extended again, then they'll pretend to be keeping negotiating, and then in a way they'll probably be operating behind the scenes. So Donald Trump will tone down his rhetoric a little bit. He will reduce the kind of frequency of military attacks on Iran in order to, as I say, prepare for the elections coming up in November. And then from the Iranian side, they have an interest in stringing negotiations along while they rebuild their missile capacity and so on. So I would expect that you might see a kind of extended ceasefire that drags on while both sides have an interest in rebuilding and want to avoid going back into all-out war, but to have a kind of definitive peace settlement and resolve the Strait of Hormuz question. That's really something that is going to be difficult, and I don't see exactly how that's going to work at the moment. But it may well be that it ends up with the kind of Iranian preference, and the Iranians end up collecting some kind of toll fee, sharing it with the Gulf, with Oman or other and Oman obviously could share that fee with the other Arab states in the Arabian Peninsula. So there may become some kind of negotiation that will work on that and work out a solution along that line, which will keep the peace, but at the same time will not be ideal in terms of keeping down the price of oil and other goods that flow out of the Persian Gulf. So so I think that's the kind of dilemma as it is, and I'll be interested to hear any other opinions. And
but before, I like to follow up to two questions.
Sure.
One is because you bring other party on this issue, China, Russia, and also the Gulf state.
Yeah.
At the same time, you predict what happened will be probably the ceasefire will be longer.
Yeah.
Then my question, of course, what about the other party that you didn't mention? The other party is Europe, Southeast Asia, including Indonesia.
Okay.
That's what's your comment. And then second prediction. So what happened in world order, world economy, it's going to be normal in terms of the oil price.
Okay, so do I think the oil price is going to be normal and go back to where it was before? Not immediately, and so I'd say for in the medium term, say for the rest of this year, I think the oil price is going to remain high.
Yep.
What can I say about Europe and Southeast Asia? Well, I see that Europe is very concerned. I know Keir Starmer, who is the Prime Minister of my own country, the UK, has been organizing a big conference. He's been to visit Saudi Arabia. He wants to get together a large number of representatives from 50 countries, I believe, to try and find some solution for this Strait of Hormuz issue. So I think the Europeans will have some kind of influence. They definitely will have an influence in kind of keeping the peace, because the kind of military solution that was sought by Trump and Netanyahu obviously hasn't worked out. So they will use their diplomatic influence and other levers to try and keep the peace and to try and open the Strait of Hormuz. But whether they actually have the power to do that in a way that is going to bring the oil price down again, I do not think is possible. I don't think they can do that. So the oil price will remain high. In regards to Southeast Asia, I think that Southeast Asia does not have sufficient economic influence, because unlike Europe, for example, which operates as a bloc through the European Union, so that gives them a great amount of economic leverage, and the economy of the EU is also, I think, significantly larger than that of Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia obviously has ASEAN, but ASEAN is not really a bloc in that much of a meaningful sense. They're not able to coordinate diplomatically or economically to exert pressure, to exert influence at negotiations, and even, I would say, under the current president of Indonesia, is even less inclined to operate as a coordinated group together with other ASEAN members than previous presidents like Jokowi and SBM and so on, who prioritize ASEAN. I think under the current president, the Indonesian foreign policy is more kind of Indonesia Aja, and without...
I can sure about this, because in Indonesia, it's actually the extension, the issue of mediator. So President Prabowo, probably what we heard is he nominated to become a mediator for United States versus Iran before. And then Iran ambassadors, it's very actively meeting a lot of former vice president and president in Indonesia. So I heard about the former ambassador, or the current ambassador of Iran, approached Yusuf Kala to become probably the mediator. So what I'm trying to say is basically what happened, what achieved by Pakistan is actually missing opportunity for Indonesia. And then the impact of what happened there in Philippines because of the oil crisis, in Indonesia probably it's also oil crisis if there is no ceasefire. But now it's ceasefire, then we hope that everything is come back to normal. So your response? before I continue this.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate your point, and I think it's a good point. So we've seen that Pakistan was able to play an important role mediating between Iran and the United States. So if Pakistan was able to do that, why not Indonesia? I would say that Pakistan probably is closer to both of those countries than Indonesia is. Obviously, geographically, it has a border with Iran, which makes it geographically much closer. And I think also diplomatically, probably the ties of Pakistan to both the United States and Iran are kind of stronger than the bonds of Indonesia. But I definitely would expect the Iranian ambassador to be very keen to engage Indonesian support. If I was the Iranian ambassador, I would be very much trying to do that. I would try to shore up my alliances among other important Islamic countries, one of them obviously being Indonesia. So I definitely would expect the Iranian government to be very keen to enlist as much Indonesian engagement as they can to kind of to give them some support and fight for a peaceful solution, and not allow this kind of I won't say random wars that Netanyahu and Trump are pursuing, but certainly we can say this overturning of United Nations law and international law and so on. I think that the Iranian government is bound to support or engage Indonesia in order to support that. But I am skeptical that Yusuf Kalla, although I know he's a very respected negotiator in Aceh, for example, and he's also played a role in some other conflicts, I doubt that he will be able to play a central role in this particular negotiation. Basically, I think that both Europe and Southeast Asia are kind of marginal, and I don't think they're going to have a central influence, and I don't think they are going to be able to significantly alter the outcome.
Thank you, John Hargreaves. So I'd like to continue with this issue. We have two panels for tonight. Then Greg Redden and then Kevin Evans. Who going first?
Up to you. Your call. You're pointing at me, are you? All right.
Yep.
So it looks like I'm next. Because you're pointing at me, I guess I have to talk to you, don't I? I think my delegated topic was overall impact. Who's going to be what's the international impact of all of this? Before getting through to that summary, I think a few points I perhaps need to stress. That there is no ceasefire. We talk about the ceasefire and what's going to be the effect of it. I think we have to agree there is not an effective ceasefire operating as of now. Indeed, within 24 hours, Israel launched huge assaults on Lebanon, unprecedentedly large assaults, then claimed that Lebanon wasn't part of the deal. But the Pakistanis, who were the trusted intermediaries in helping birth this agreement, they made it quite clear, indeed, that Lebanon and that Yemen and Gaza were included in the deal. It wasn't just America and Israel and Iran. So there isn't actually an effective ceasefire. There are massive attacks taking place on Lebanon, which aren't going very well for Israel in some regards too. So that's the first point I'd like to make, that we are talking about a ceasefire which actually effectively doesn't really exist. What else was I going to mention? So there is no ceasefire. I don't believe that negotiations and diplomacy in the traditional sense will resolve the problem. And I don't believe that Iran has any faith in diplomacy, negotiations with America or with Israel as being likely to produce any sort of good result. And they have very, very good reason not to believe that negotiations will bring good results. They have been twice in the midst of negotiations, presumably in good faith, when they've been literally bombed in the middle of negotiations. In previous conflict, they sent Hezbollah representatives to another country to negotiate, and they got bombed while they were there. So I think the reality is, and it's a reality that the Iranians are aware of, they must reduce the physical capacity of America and of Iran, of America and Israel, to destroy them. While that physical capability is still there, Iran will not have peace. And they won't believe any kind of promises In the same way, the Minsk Accords in Ukraine, they're just a negotiating procedure. There is no reason why the Iranians should put any faith in the negotiating procedure if conducted with America or with Israel. American interests and Israeli interests are different. America can afford to step away from this war in Iran. Their loss is loss of faith, loss of face, which in Trump's case is a whole lot of face to lose, an embarrassment. But the absolute truth of the fact that they cannot crush Iran in the same way they did Venezuela or win a cheap, nice PR type victory is very obvious. I think the birth of the negotiations, I think even Donald Trump realized he had gone too far with his 24-hour ultimatum in very strident terms, threatening to destroy a whole people, a whole nation, a whole culture. And that was too much. I think American military said, no, we will not do that. They might have remembered the Nuremberg trials of the German officers who said, we're just following orders. I think at some level, many American military just did not want to support that policy and would not. And even if it cost them their job, they weren't going to be part of an illegal mass planned genocide in an illegal war. That's just too much on their plate. So they've pulled away from Donald Trump and they've stood up to him, which I think is very brave of a lot of good Americans. The war, I think, will be, I agree with the other comments that Russia and China are probably doing quite well. In the same way that America has very much declared they love that war in Ukraine because Ukrainians are dying. Ukrainians are buying a whole lot of guns from America and feeding the American economy. So it's sapping the strength of Russia and feeding the economy of America. Well, it's having your cake and eating it, isn't it? So now they're copying the same sort of deal in Iran. Iran is buying lots of armaments, but from China and Russia. Iran is soaking up American and Israeli blood. And so this is a different deal now. And Russia and China can sit back and enjoy the same role that America did vis-a-vis Ukraine. China and Russia are poised to reap the same sort of benefits from the same sort of outlook as America has enjoyed in Ukraine. Maybe a bit of karma there. Okay, what's it like to be on the receiving end of that particular optics? Also, ceasefire. I think another reason that Trump can't move, there are no military targets left bombable in Ukraine. They're all now deep underground. So they take massive assaults of manpower to get in there, find how to get in under the mountains and find these places. But you're not going to bomb them. You're not going to bomb the whole mountain away to find it. It can't happen. It's going to take a massive man on the ground, which is huge losses. Also, the idea of just wiping out the whole civilization, the optics that came out from that. Many men, women, and children going onto the very bridges which Donald Trump said, I'm going to bomb them. Did he scare the Ukrainians? No. They had parties on the bridges that said, come and get us. We are not scared of you. And that optically, on the world scale, we saw it. Thousands of men, women, and children standing defiantly on the bridge. You're going to blow it up? You're blowing me up with it, mate. And that was an act of public defiance on a world scale, which would have been quite confounding. Iran says it's going to bomb an American base. They scatter and leave and go to hotels and move off quickly. The Iranians are showing a different attitude because their life is on the line. And they're saying, you want our country? I'll be the first to go. You want to kill us? Me first. And it's mums and dads and kids. The old narrative about all the Iranians being fed up with their government, happy to go on the streets and protest and take risks. That narrative, if it ever was true, is now so obviously not. You can see large masses of Iranian people not being instructed by the government to stand on the bridges, but of their own will, going out there to defend their country with their own life in a bold, brave. It doesn't even appear desperate. The total commitment. They've got the tradition of the Shia Muslims, which is the death of Hussein, the sacrifice, the willingness to die for a good cause, which is not very common in the international stage. Certainly not a very strong sentiment amongst Americans. But that's what they're up against. And they have to appreciate you're not fighting Venezuelans, you're not fighting Zionists, you're not fighting Israelis, you're fighting a country of united people prepared to die publicly in a way which Donald Trump understands optics. And I think he came to understand the optics of destroying this whole country. The first time, the optics of a bridge covered in volunteering civilian people ready to die for their country. It's very hard to massage that and get the right press to cover that in a way which suits your purposes. So I guess I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm just adding a bit more, though. But there is no credibility about negotiations. The Iranians are not that stupid. They know that any promises made, it has to be physically reducing the Israelis and the American forces to a point where they cannot constitute a threat to them, or the price of staying back to the war is so obviously huge that they can't pick up that tab and do it. And I think they're doing that because there are still stories that there are even more undisclosed, high-powered weapons they've still been holding back. And so I think the threat of the further repercussions of it invading again, that's what they're going to rely on. Not the promises of America, but to know that physically they cannot win by any measure by attacking Iran again. And that's where Iran is going to fight its war until that point. And I don't think they ever really believed that Trump was serious about accepting a peace. Why should they believe him? There's no reason why they should. It's also several times been mentioned that Trump has called a ceasefire, understanding that that's going to bring back the price of oil by whatever. So he has bought at the lower end of the market, knowing damn well he's going to resume the fight. He would talk about having peace, and it looks like it's over. A big international sigh of relief. The market's relieved. Petrol comes down by $10, $20, and Donald's in there buying it because he knows damn well. The next day, guess what? Another bombing raid, and the oil goes up the buggery again. And guess who? Accidentally along the way. So it has been suggested, allegedly, Trump and some friends of his have been manipulating the market in that fashion to pick up a small profit on the way through. This idea of Donald Trump looking for a personal profit has also been mentioned about the Straits of Hormuz. Okay, how about a toll gate, but 50-50? Yeah. Well, screw it. We'll charge a toll, but how about in the peaceful way? You screw them and we screw them too. That's the sort of deal that Donald's talking about. Always got half an eye on the commercial value of what he's on about. And that's also understood, I think, by the Iranians. I don't know if you guys have seen those cartoons, the Lego cartoons of Trump and the impact of that. Americans are laughing themselves stupid at the Lego comics of these characters and the language they use and the humor, the humanity. It's almost grotesque. You want to come and kill us? You'll be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow. It's a bit busy. Could you reschedule that to 8 o'clock? They're laughing in the face of America in a way which Donald, who's aware of optics, the optics of those cartoons that the Iranians are generating, there's nothing in parallel. What can the Americans say about the Iranians that has the sort of impact, moral impact, humor impact, entertainment impact that the Iranians are generating by their PR approach to this whole war? It's another unique chapter in World War. The idea of the little guy taking on the big guy is right around the world. This is the little guy winning victories against the big guy. China, it's been mentioned, there may have been some drawback. The idea, though, that Iranians said, okay, you can send your oil through here, except if you're an American or an Israeli. Oh, and by the way, you buy the oil in Chinese currency. Oh, and by the way, $1 a gallon, which is probably $2 million per ship coming through. And they actually have the power almost to implement that. At least America couldn't say, no, we can't even consider that. America's been forced to say, you have to consider that. My suspicion is that Iran still has lots of toys to play with. John talked about the capacity of the Americans to produce missiles. Every statistic I've seen, they have been exhausting their stock in the Ukrainian war for a long time. And the level of missiles being used to defend Israel, they've been calling up missiles out of Korea, out of Japan, to help go and defend Tel Aviv because they haven't got them in stock in America. And it takes a long time. I saw the production figures. They can only produce 150 of some of these super strong missiles. They're not mass producible. Whereas the fact that the Iranian production facilities are underground are probably now being supported by supply lines from China and from Russia, and also some new technologies which they're getting hold of through liaison with Russia and China. one of the most significant is no longer being reliant on GPS for their guidance. And they can interrupt the American guidance system, GPS, to distract the F-35 bombers coming to Iran. They can distort that. And without guidance of GPS, and without access to the alternative Russian and Chinese models of alternatives to GPS, that's putting a whole new factor in the equation, which is just now being resolved. But it means an F-35 can no longer fly safely over Iran, or as safely as it was supposed to be able to, which wasn't actually particularly safe if you look at their record in trying to make an attack on the atomic facilities near Isfahan, isn't it? Sorry?
Isfahan.
Isfahan, yeah. They didn't send in two huge big supply just to look for a pilot. No, they were looking for a chance to nab the bloody nuclear fissile material, nick off and say, look, we've got a home free, we've got the, now you can't have it, and now you've got to negotiate peace. That was like another parallel to the Venezuela situation. We've nabbed your president, and now he's ours, and now you've got to negotiate it with. They were looking at a parallel like that, a nice, easy hit, but it didn't work out very well, and quite a few Americans actually died, and how many billions of dollars worth of material left scattered over the deserts in Iran are up for grabs. This is a change. Iran cannot afford to negotiate, because negotiate means talking to Israel and to America as if they are capable of diplomacy and entering a treaty that you can rely on. The Iranians know that's just not possible with those as negotiating partners. They need to crush and beat or threaten or cost Israel and America at such a price that they have to realize it's their own best interest not to attack Iran any further. And until the Iranians are convinced that that's where, on the ground, in the field, that's where the Americans and the Israelis are, they will not be so stupid as to sign some document promising some future reward on the basis of trusting someone. I don't believe they're that stupid. In the meantime, I look forward to more videos coming out of Iran. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
I think there's another interesting
You're going to think?
Oh, sorry.
We've got kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is, thank you, Redden, and I like also to report that there are a lot of viewers, because this is live, and there's some parts, of course, in Bahasa Indonesia. I know all of you can speak in Bahasa, but then we still have to continue for today.
Okay,
and today is last, maybe we can arrange for the next time. And the last panel for today is Kevin Evans, and you can pick some of the issue here, but of course I have to add two more. One is, can there be a real peace? That's number one. And number two, has the crisis changed the balance of power in that region, the Middle East, in other regions, Europe, Southeast Asia, or in the world?
I would begin by putting the view, and it's agreeing with Greg here, that there is no ceasefire. The Americans would like to project the idea as if there is, and I guess for the Gulf states, they're not being bombed by Iran, so they're relieved at the moment. But I think almost the elephant in the whole discussion, we keep talking about America and Iran, and we're talking about America as if it's somehow a sovereign independent actor. But I think it's being dragged by the nose by the Israelis. And it's being dragged by the nose by the Israelis for a couple of reasons. The first is an incredibly wily, ultimate Machiavellian art player in Israel, who knows how to work the Americans better than anybody, and who's a master craftsman within his own polity, and residing over a polity that frankly has completely lost its sense of humanity. And the second element of that is an America that's completely dysfunctional, that has no strategy, has no real approach. It's assuaging the ego of a very incompetent and unstable old man. And for him, of course, it's all about optics, not substance. And so for him to sort of present a victory, again, belies the point that it's not a victory for him to grab. Whatever he might want to do, raise a flag and say we've won Raqqa, he's not being allowed to escape. The Iranians are not letting him out. And the Israelis, frankly, are not going to abide by a peace, as we've discussed. They're continuing to bomb the life out of southern Lebanon with impunity, yet again. But at some point, the Iranians simply have to remind, hang on, this was part of you're continuing to bomb these people. No, it's back on. So what I think we'll see is sort of an oscillating process of hot war, warm war, hot war, warm war, lots of frenetic efforts of trying to create some sort of a ceasefire or, fancifully a kind of a peace or a holding place. My suspicion is that we will see this dynamic continue until early November. In late October, Israel has to go to elections, and early November, the Americans go for their midterms. The opportunity for regime change is more likely to be in the composition of the two governments in Israel and the United States. Unfortunately, in terms of electoral strength in Israel, the forces opposed to this strident supremacism that's increasingly affected discourse in that country is quite disorganized. So I'm not exactly sure what will come out of those elections. On the United States side, there may well be some significant shift away. And the other dynamic is the traditional capacity of Israel to impact, influence political discourse and policy in most Western countries, and that now includes the US, has been dramatically curtailed. So while they may be mowing the lawn with great pleasure around the region and now assuming Iran is part of the backyard, their traditional sources of support, Europe's clearly gone. I think Spain's now withdrawn its ambassador. The country is very quickly on its way to being, I call it South African. So it's very quickly on the way to being isolated as a pariah, excluded from its traditional friends and partners. And I think even in the United States, there is an increasing lack of appetite for being dragged along to yet more of the kind of behaviour that they've all now seen. So the mystique and all of that that's been used for decades to cajole, bully, entice successive generations of Westerners, that's now gone. So from the American side, when we're looking at, we keep talking about America, if America leaves NATO, NATO dies. I don't believe that. It's a little bit like when the French withdrew, not fully, but pulled back from NATO at one point. It didn't die. Yes, the United States is the largest partner in NATO, but NATO would continue on until the Americans come to their senses or something else goes on. So there's a transformation inside that country. But until then, again, I would say in the US, stop blaming the old man at the top. He's been enabled. The system has profound constitutional political flaws that's allowed this to occur and has rigidities that prevent sensible action. I mean, the man wouldn't last, I'm sorry to say this, the man wouldn't last 5 minutes in a town council in an Australian village. He wouldn't last. But yet under that constitutional system that they're stuck with there, and that electoral system, you can freeze yourself into a system and dominate it in such a way. As I said, it took 240 years for the system to finally reveal its fundamental flaws, but they're now open for all to see. So he himself is just a symbol of a much bigger malaise in the system. So I would say Europe is taking a different path, and it's withholding support. I think he thought he could bully and bluster. and somehow that all came in. Even the Brits are standing up and saying, no, enough of this. I'm not putting up with this. I'm not going to be treated like this anymore, and I'm not going to be dragged into some nonsensical thing that's frankly illegal. So that's one element. I think this will just continue to oscillate until after that. So after that, I would be interested to see, because the Iranians do read history, which is certainly more than the President of America can do. And so they, if you recall, the hostages, the embassy hostages, were released the day after Ronald Reagan became president. So they continued to extort, bully, embarrass, humiliate Jimmy Carter's administration. And then the day after Reagan became president, they were released and sent home. So my sense is these people read history, and they know how to put pressure on the system there. They know Trump wants to squirm out, and why would they let him? He did this himself. He's got to pay the costs, and all of his support base are going to have to pay the cost. And they've been very badly impacted and affected. But I guess this was what we might call a brothyuda that's been waiting for many years, and it's not between America and Iran, it's between Israel and Iran. So again, we keep looking at America, but actually think of America as the great big bodyguard that's protecting this other celebrity, but the bodyguard actually isn't the brains in this operation. So I think we need to kind of situate that in that way. And that's, I think, the impact of that, of course, on the Gulf states has been that the big bad bodyguard actually isn't really doing much of a job of defending the compact that they've developed over 30 years. So what fallout may come after that, I guess, will depend whether the next round of hot war is how much more devastating it is. For prices and inflation, that's not going to change for the next couple of years. Even if everyone signs a peace agreement, the impact and the destruction on facilities will take a couple of years at least to recover to a point where production and of fuel. Perhaps in a strange way, it might also accelerate move towards alternative fuels, whether it's biodiesel or other things. Remember in the 70s, in the oil embargo then, the Brazilians really kicked off the move towards bioethanol to replace petrol with sugarcane. So it may well be this structural instability may well be a force for pushing towards greater use of other kinds of fuel. So it might actually be hastening the end of the oil era. But maybe one of the signs that emerges out of all of this mess.
Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House.
Thank you, Kevin Evans.
Palm
Since you are the last speaker for today, I thank you. We have also seen other speakers, Steve Smith, John Hargreaves, and Greg Redden. So this discussion is normally conducted every month on the world affair issue at this table, cafe in South Jakarta. So I know from the reader that they want to have an Indonesian language for the discussion. Maybe for the next time we can do that in.
Bagaimana kami meyakinkan orangnya bahwa kami sanggup?
Yes, you can.
Bagaimana sendiri-sendiri ya, John, meyakinkan orangnya bahwa kami tidak akan mengecewakan kalau mau bahasa Indonesia.
Ya,
Yes.
bisa juga pakai
Bisa.
bahasa Indonesia kalau disuruh bisa.
Siap. Kevin, in bahasa?
Ya, itu bisa pakai bahasa Indonesia juga.
Wow.
Saya harap bisa meyakinkan bahwa kami bertiga, mesti mungkin ragu-ragu dikit, tapi rata-rata kita sanggup membawakan makalah data-data apa yang kami mau menyampaikan dengan perantara bahasa Indonesia yang cukup bisa disampaikan. Moga-moga. Insya Allah.
Thank you, Greg Redden.
Ya, insyaAllah. Saya bisa sedikit-sedikit, tapi tidak begitu pasti sekali. Jadi, ya, apa yang saya bisa campur-campur.
Okay.
Thank you. So next time will be in bahasa. Siap. By the time, see you next time.
Terima kasih Pak. Mohon maaf lahir dan batin.
Yeah, what I was thinking then, it's very interesting. Geographically, Yemen